The French government recently announced a €100 billion stimulus plan to revive the local economy from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yet, as the coronavirus continues to propagate across the country, the economic prospect seems to spiral downwards. How much faith may we have that this recovery plan will help restore the French economy, also taking into account the €400 billion made available by the government earlier this year to help businesses and keep employment? HEC Paris Professor of Economics Tomasz Michalski explains.
Will the plan to relaunch the French economy that was unveiled by the government on September the 3rd work on top of the already existing measures? Let's put it within the current economic context. France is getting back to work from vacation. Economic measures that sustain employment thus far, for example, furloughing workers, are coming to an end in most sectors. This may mean that firms that evaluated their situation during the last months begin to fire workers if the economy does not rebound strongly. The return of the COVID-19 pandemic further clouds the picture. Consumers may still withhold purchases and increase savings because of precautionary motives. The economic hardship may lead to social discontent and the return of the Yellow Jacket movement. Therefore, some stimulus coupled with reforms may be welcome. The government proposes a €100 billion worth of a stimulus that is 4% of French GDP. There are three main points in the plan. Let's go through them one by one. The plan is a mix of measures to stimulate supply, increase investment, and employment. First, tax cuts on production will help firms to weather better the economic storm and potentially gain on competitiveness vis-à-vis firms in neighboring countries. This can also stimulate employment or simply slow down firing already employed workers. This part of the plan is more like a fiscal reform that Macron wanted to implement for a while. Second, various schemes that target green transformation, broadly reducing carbon emissions, will help to increase private investment and hence economic activity. Some will be in construction, like insulating buildings, others in R&D, for example, researching on hydrogen fuels. The plan involves subsidizing innovation in industries that have high future potential, but are difficult to implement without government intervention worldwide because of scale, network effects, etc. They may benefit from creating so-called home market effects. The size of the local market may be important for the success of a product. This is a gamble that may create valuable and internationally marketable technologies. A third pillar of the plan involves various measures to increase employment. Particularly interesting is subsidizing apprenticeships for young workers. This attempts to solve a long-standing problem of youth unemployment that is especially high in France among OECD countries, and which grew more acute during the pandemic. An important aspect is that the stimulus will benefit firms of various sizes, scattered all over the French territory. The stimulus will affect small companies producing non-tradables and workers of different occupations. It can therefore reach people from different social strata all over France. It is clear that it largely affects supply. The French government counts on the reported 100 billion of household savings accumulated during the lockdown to materialize into purchases in the coming months without additional incentives. This stands in contrast, for example, to the German plan that lowers VAT and may have substantial international spillovers. Stimulus measures to sustain car manufacturers in the 2008-2009 crisis benefited many other countries than the one that introduced them because they produced also automotive components. There are, of course, worries about the implementation of the plan. First, although 40% of financing will come from the EU funds, it will add to the ballooning deficit and debt. Second, we'll see whether the government R&D incentives will translate into new inventions in the long run. Third, it's not clear how successful the employment stimulus will be in the current economic context. Firms are reluctant to hire in recessions. However, this plan represents a different way of thinking about economic stimuli in France. Let's see if it will work.